Recording in progress.
Welcome. I think we're ready to go. Welcome everyone to the San Rafael City Council meeting. Today is Monday, April 21st. I'll request the city clerk to call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bushy is absent. Councilmember Hill.
Present.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Present.
Councilmember Yeden's Gulati.
Present.
Mayor Kate.
Present. We met in a closed session prior, and I invite the city attorney to report out on that item.
Thank you. No reportable action was taken in closed session this evening.
Thank you. Before we begin this evening's meeting, I want to take a moment to acknowledge a tragedy that has deeply impacted many in our broader community. Recently, 5 students from the Archie Williams High School lost their lives in a devastating car accident. A 6th student remains hospitalized. While this tragedy occurred outside our city, we know that the heartbreak doesn't stop at city limits. Grief moves through school hallways, friend groups, family ties, and neighborhoods. And many in San Rafael are feeling the weight of this loss. Our San Rafael firefighters were among the first responders at the scene, and I want to recognize their courage and compassion in the face of such a heartbreaking event. These moments remind us of just how interconnected our communities are, how deeply our public servants are woven into the fabric of our region. On behalf of the city of San Rafael, I want to extend our deepest condolences to all who are grieving. As we begin the work of local government tonight, we do so not apart from our community, but within it, carrying both its responsibilities and its sorrows. We'll now observe a moment of silence before moving into the meeting agenda. Thank you. We'll now begin tonight's meeting. The city clerk will describe how people can participate.
Tonight's meeting is being recorded and streamed live to YouTube. For members of the public wishing to provide public comment, displayed on the podium and the projector is the timer to help you stay within your 2-minute time frame. You're invited, though not required, to introduce yourself and say what area of San Rafael you live in, or if you're from outside of San Rafael. We do offer closed captioning for this meeting on Zoom. You can select the live transcript button on Zoom to enable this feature. Community members may request reasonable accommodations to provide public comments virtually. For more information about that, or if there's any technical difficulties, you can email me at city.clerk@cityofsanrafael.org. Thank you.
Thank you. We start our business meeting with city manager and council member reports. I'll turn to the city manager for her report.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I want to just start off talking about Mental Health Month, which is May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and it's a time to highlight the importance of self-care, taking care of one another, and to help reduce the stigma around seeking help for mental health conditions. Marin County Behavioral Health and Recovery Services, along with other community partners, are hosting over 15 events throughout the month to promote mental health. You can learn more at their site, which is prevention at the Marin County Behavioral Health Resources website. I also wanted to echo Mayor Kate's comments in context of Mental Health Support Month around this heartbreaking tragedy, and recognize all the first responders, including San Rafael, but the many first responders across our county who were attending on scene. I wanted to call out, I think it's a moment to also appreciate what we do here in San Rafael to take care of one another, and particularly the job that our first responders have in responding to these incredibly traumatic events. So our San Rafael Fire Department has a peer support team, which has 10 trained peer support members. They regularly will check in particularly when there's a traumatic incident, to offer assistance with multiple programs for our first responders that are particularly tailored to the kind of trauma they experience in these type of accidents. So, and also the police department also has access to these services. We use a group called, what are they called? Public Safety Family Counseling Group. And the peer support group kind of circled around the folks that responded to this call immediately, debriefing and diffusing sessions this weekend and continuing. Also, just wanted to appreciate Chief Roman, who's also extended our fire department support to the County of Marin and Ross Valley fire departments as they continue to navigate this difficult time in their community. Okay, Measure D is a library property tax, which was passed in 2016. It raises $1.2 million annually for library services and programs, and it will be set to expire in June of 2026. So the city has commissioned a community survey to conduct research on the potential renewal of the library parcel tax. So beginning next week, representatives from independent research firms called GRA and McGuire Research will be reaching out to registered voters via email, text, and telephone to ask questions about city services. The survey is entirely confidential, anonymous, and voluntary. I would just encourage, for those of you listening in the community, please respond to this. Sometimes folks think this is, a fake survey, and it's not really the city of San Rafael, but it's really important that we have an independent firm do the polling for us. So if there are questions, you can email citymanager.survey@cityofsanrafael.org, and that will automatically email the independent polling research firms. And they will respond to those questions, not city staff. Also wanted to mention an opportunity for community feedback. The Public Works Department is updating its bicycle and pedestrian plan, which will guide the improvements over the next 5 to 10 years. You can learn more about the project on the city's webpage that's dedicated to this. There's also upcoming in-person events and a short online survey to offer feedback. We do have an emergency road repair situation happening in front of San Rafael High School. So I thought I would mention that the Public Works team has been working furiously to try to repair. It's a storm drain in the left westbound lane on 3rd Street. The work is going to start tomorrow. They're going to do it in the evening to try to reduce the impact to traffic, obviously, and the school, kids trying to get to school. So it'll be approximately 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. The travel lane will remain closed to traffic for the duration of the project, not during working hours. The crosswalk will be closed during the night, but reopened each day to minimize the disruption, so long as it's safe to do so during school hours. Also wanted to mention that there are a slew of laws going through the California legislature right now, which the staff has been working hard on preparing letters. I won't mention all of them because there's too many to mention. I'll mention the ones that the city is opposing. AB 647 creates significant challenges for our local housing policy and planning. It imposes top-down mandates that would override local control and limit our ability to make decisions.
Remember that. Excuse me, let the city manager finish her report, and then you'll have an opportunity to have public comment.
That reflect the needs and priorities of our community. The other letter of opposition is for SB 634, which would significantly hinder local government's ability to manage and enforce our own housing policies in a balanced and community-driven manner. Just a couple of events. And the city's hosting a Sea Level Rise and Climate Action Forum, which is actually, that live event is sold out. But you can still, there's a virtual listen-in option on the city's calendar of events page. It's April 24th, 5:30 to 7:30. Canal Alliance is having a big community fair coming up on Saturday, May 3rd from 12 to 4 at their new headquarters at 711 Grand Avenue. And then lastly, we have a Seeds of Hope Fair and luncheon coming up on Monday, May 5th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. That's at the San Rafael B Street Community Center. It's an incredible opportunity. If you haven't been there before, there's tons of volunteers and agency partners providing support to individuals experiencing homelessness, offering services like medical and animal care, haircuts, and a really nice warm meal. So if you want to get involved or learn more about Seeds of Hope, you can reach out to Lynn Murphy at our police department, who's our mental health outreach worker, at 415-485-3489. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn to my colleagues for their report out. Councilmember Kurtz? Ready?
Thank you. I attended the Golden Gate Regional 2025 Legislative Breakfast, which is a focus on the Lanterman legislation for protection of home care advocates as well as agencies serving children and adults with disabilities. Attended the Persian New Year celebration along with Chief Spiller. Thank you to everyone from the city who participated in that. It was a great event, beautiful day. And also with Mayor Kate attended the Joint City County Homeless Committee. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hill?
Thank you, Mayor Kate. 2 meetings to report on Wednesday, April 16th. With Mayor Kate, attended the City Finance Subcommittee meeting. We addressed several topics, including the city's purchasing policy, Measure D renewal for library operations and streeteries. And then on Saturday, April 19th, I attended the Spring Fling Egg Hunt at Gerstle Park, sponsored by the Gerstle Park Neighborhood Association. So many excited children and adult children were there having fun hunting eggs. It was a beautiful event, so thank you to the Gerstle Park Neighborhood Association, led by the very wonderful Gina Silvestri. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Iranz Gulati?
Thank you, Mayor. I attended on Zoom the Cal City's North Bay City and Congressional meeting with Congressman Thompson and Congressman Huffman, telling us how the impacts of the federal government, how it reflects into our local governments. Also attended the MC Clean Energy Board of Directors and on April 17, and there were awards for the Charles McGlashan Advocacy Award. So they had not in Marine this time, unfortunately, but it's still really nice to recognize the Chamber of Commerce from Concord, a representative from the city of St. Helena, and Jim Becker from RCF Connects. But the most important thing is that the board also approved a clean energy prepayment agreement through the California Community Choice Financing Authority, and this is going to save MC and all the customers $6 million annually on renewable energy cost. And this is no cost to MC or any of the member communities like San Rafael. So that's really exciting. And then finally, on Saturday, I attended the first Earth Day celebration event this month, doing a cleanup day in the canal. We had over 30 volunteers coming, neighbors. We have people from Botes del Canal, from the County of Marin. Our supervisor, Rodoni, was there with the executive Derek, Mission San Rafael Rotary, and also the Boy Scouts. And we have people as far as from Fairfield. They did it like the family day. So it was really nice. Huge thank you to Tom Harrison. He's our longtime volunteer and last year's public service awardee for organizing everything with Corey Bitov. And it was such a beautiful day, really connecting all the communities and doing something for the earth. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll report out. I attended the SMART, the Sonoma Marin Area Rapid Transit meeting. March of 2025, the ridership was 43% higher than March of 2024. And in the last year, over 1 million riders have ridden SMART. That followed those, that data was a long discussion around the potential of a tax renewal. You can go and watch the meeting. It was very extensive. There was polling that had been done. And so there was a conversation with the board what that would look like. We had an update on the Redwood Bike Share, of which we have some of the stations here. We have one station right here outside of City Hall. We have some down in the West End, and we have some down near the SMART station. There were 555 trips of the bike shares, not just the San Rafael ones, but the system in total. Hopefully that number will be higher. I think it's still new because there are sites from here all the way up to Sonoma. The Windsor station, which the voters had voted for, will be starting to have passengers coming in May. So that extension is coming online. The board also approved continuation of the Fare Free program, as in Fare, F-A-R-E, Fare Free program for youths under 18 and seniors for the next fiscal year. That's been a wildly successful program. In addition, this past Saturday was very busy this past Saturday. Marin MoCA, which Museum of Contemporary Art. They're housed in Nevada when they have a pop-up or a new site here in San Rafael, kind of kitty corner to our public safety building. there was their new exhibit called Into the Flow, and I was honored to say a few words. It's about water and climate impacts related to water, and having it here in San Rafael, where we will feel the effects of the sea level of the bay rising. First of all, it was great to be there. They also offered, whether you were there at the opening or not, free membership to anyone with a Marin County address for the next year. You can go on their website and fill out the information, and you will have a free membership to Marin MoCA. And finally, this is a future item. Usually we report on what we've already done, but being that it's Climate Week and tomorrow is officially Earth Day, I will be participating in San Francisco's Climate Week activities. I will be part of a panel on the BCDC Bay Conservation Development Corps tomorrow at the Metro Center. We'll be talking about artificial intelligence and how can it play a role in sea level rise and government planning. So it should be interesting. So hopefully everyone can participate in one way, shape, or form as we celebrate our planet this week. So thank you all for what you do off of the dais. As promised, there's public comment on this, the report. So if you'd like to have any, if you'd like to make any comments, we would welcome those at this moment. Is there any public comment? Okay. So this is on the city manager and council member reports.
Thank you for your support of the free train program for SMART. It sounds like that free train program will extend another fiscal year to the end of June 2026. So people over 64 or under 19 years old can continue to ride the train for free. It's great. I also spoke there about some bike safety stuff with the new SMART pathway between here in San Rafael, in between the Embassy Suites and the San Rafael Airport. You know, whoever put those reflectors on that pole that's right in the middle of the pathway, you know, I'm really appreciative. But I just want to reiterate that those reflectors really need to be bright. So basically what got put onto the pole were these additional strips. As a bicyclist who has heavy duty lights, I still can't see that pole. And if I can't see it, I know someone else isn't going to see that. So what I suggest is that the pole have a vertical reflector, some sort of white color, not that yellow reflector. It's just not effective enough. If you ever walk around in Corte Madera by the DMV, that multi-purpose pathway, you look at that pole that's right on that bridge, that first bridge next to the DMV, you'll see a reflector there. You can see from miles away. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Not seeing anyone, I will move on to the consent agenda. And there's already been a request to hold item 4C for a separate vote, which is the camping ordinance final adoptions. Are there any other items that my council would like to put aside? No? Oh. And okay, and 4F, we'll just do them separately. Okay, so we'll do those separately, but I'm going to go ahead and take public comment on all the items, 4A through 4F. If you would like to comment on the consent agenda, any of the items, now is your opportunity. And you are welcome, but not required, to say your name and what part of San Rafael you live in.
Matt Butler, a resident of San Rafael, and I'm here to talk to you about your war on camping. We live in an age of misinformation, disinformation, and hundreds of lies an hour coming at us. And the lie you are trying to tell is that San Rafael has a camping problem. San Rafael does not have a camping problem. San Rafael has a severe housing shortage brought about by local control, a bunch of podunk simpletons who don't realize the needs of humanity and created this problem. This is 50 years of bad housing policy that got us here tonight, where you're going to vote on a camping problem, which is non-existent. Words matter and the truth matters, and we do not have a camping problem. We have a housing crisis. I would encourage everybody in this room who wants San Rafael to ever have a chance of not having homeless people on the street, to contact our assembly person and vote in favor of AB 647 and SB 6334, because local control created this problem. Teachers can't live here. Nurses can't live here. Firefighters can't live here. We need to address this problem. Calling it camping is not going to make the problem going away. Time to let higher thinkers, more evolved people tell San Rafael how to solve this problem, because podunk simpletons created this.
Any other comments on the consent agenda, items 4A through 4F? Not seeing any, I will close the public comment and bring it back. Councilmember Kurtz, did you want to comment on 4C? And then Councilmember Hill.
Only consistent with our discussion the last time we met around this, that I'll be voting no on this item.
Okay, so we will ask the city clerk, we can vote on it separately, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. Item 4F, Councilmember Hill.
Yeah, the comment I wanted to make on 4F is really that we seldom get public works projects that are less visible to be celebrated. These are things that happen underneath the ground and yet have major impacts to the community that if it all goes well, we never see it and we never get a call. So the culvert that it was replaced will allow for a better throughput of water during major events. But this is one that would generally go under the ground that we'd never see. So I just want to make sure we're calling out when we get infrastructure wins, because this is a big one. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments. So I would accept a motion on the consent agenda minus 4C. Is there a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda with the removal of 4C, and are we doing 4F as a separate? No, just 4C. Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hill,
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz,
Aye.
Councilmember Yeden's Galati,
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 4-0. Is there a motion on item 4C?
I move that we pass item 4C.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hill,
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz,
No.
Councilmember Yeden's Galati,
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 3-1. Thank you. We have a public hearing this evening, and it's an appeal to the City Council of the Planning Commission's approval of a reasonable accommodation request. The staff will present the item, and then the appellant will have an opportunity to speak, as well as the applicant, after which the council members will ask any questions that they may have.
Good evening, Mayor Kate, council members, Micah Hinkle, Community Economic Development Director. My shout out to the city clerk's office. Someone messed with our room. You know, I don't know what happened. My chair's not here, but it is now, so I'm excited. So before you tonight is an appeal of a reasonable accommodation request for 131 Valley View Avenue. You know, this is actually a unique kind of request. I think in my planning career, I processed one before this application. So it's a little different in terms of land use and the questions being asked here. But with that, luckily we have Associate Planner Renee Nickening to help us understand 131 Valley View. Thank you. Renee.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. As Micah mentioned, I'm Renee Nickenig, Associate Planner, and I'm the planner for this project and will be presenting on it. So the address in question is 131 Valley View Avenue. Should I be close? No, we're not presenting. Yes. It's close. Here we go. All right.
So it's not just the chairs.
Is it possible to do the presentation without the slides? Okay. We can get
Yes,
started. Okay,
definitely
go ahead.
possible. So the purpose of this hearing tonight is that we have had an appeal to an approval by the Planning Commission for the City Council to hear on a decision to approve a reasonable accommodation request at 131 Valley View Avenue. A brief chronology of this project: in October 2024, staff approved a reasonable accommodation request at 131 Avenue for several additions and modifications to the existing residence. On October 21st, 2024, we received an appeal to the Planning Commission on the administrative decision. The Planning Commission heard the appeal on February 25th and approved the appeal in part and upheld the decision in part, including modifications to the plans. And on February 27th, we received an appeal to that decision by the Planning Commission to the City Council, which is why we are here tonight. All right. The appeal we received to the City Council refers back to the appeal that was made to the Planning Commission, for which we received an extensive list of points made by the appellant. To briefly summarize the 4 points, the appellant notes that they find no nexus between the disability and the requested accommodation. Staff spoke extensively with the applicant in reviewing this reasonable accommodation request for this topic. The appellant notes that the city failed to investigate potential alternatives. Again, staff worked very closely with the applicant, discussed many options, and discussed possibilities, including in the interior of the home and constraints of the site, and agreed that this is the option presented was the most reasonable. The appellant notes the fire hazard risk at this site and on the hillside. Staff did not find any fire hazard large enough to not approve the project, so findings could still be made for this project. And the appellant also noted that they were denied due process, and staff has properly complied with all applicable local, state, and federal laws in processing the reasonable accommodations. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt the resolution to deny the appeal and uphold the Planning Commission's approval of a reasonable accommodation request at 131 Valley View Avenue. I will note that I'm happy to answer any questions on this topic, including the report previously presented. I'll also note that the appellant is available via Zoom this evening, and our applicant is here in the chambers to make presentations.
Thank you, Renee. I'm glad we got the slides to work. So before the council asks any questions, we will allow the appellant to have a presentation limited to no longer than 10 minutes.
Elizabeth, I'm promoting you to a panelist right now.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can. Go ahead.
Okay, we presented our slide presentation and provided that to staff. Does it have it ready? Otherwise, can I share my screen?
We're checking on that. Hold on.
Just
Thank
give us
you.
one moment.
I think we prefer to do it in the chambers rather than sharing screen, but let's see what we can work.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth Breckus of Breckus Law Partners, representing Josh Sullivan and Lisa Del Gallo. Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. This appeal is very important to my clients, and we do appreciate your time. I also want to explain that the primary basis for the appeal and my client's biggest concern is about fire safety. Can I have the next slide, please? Both the appellants and the city agree that the plans show an ADU, and yet the resolution specifically says that the plans with the ADU are approved, and the city staff confirms that was not the intent. Without the ADU, there is no support for the master bedroom addition because it is supported by the ADU. So this is not a completed plan that could be approved. Further, I want to highlight that the ADU is a substantial remodel and the fire code kicks in and the house must be fire hardened. So if the intent is to build the ADU, the home has to be fire hardened. And that's because the ADU adds roughly 1,000 square foot to a 1,400 square foot home and meets the definition of substantial remodel. And therefore triggers fire hardening retrofit. Also, if the applicant builds the proposed ADU within 3 years of doing this addition, it's a substantial remodel, and all construction, even past construction completed, must be upgraded. Next slide, please. In addition to the deficiency with the resolution, the requested accommodations have no nexus to a mobility disability, or at least some of them don't. For example, there's no support for the addition of a bay window. A 15 by 18 foot dining space is not necessary, and these elements should go through design review. Even if the city was to reduce the dining room, there would still be generous dimensions to that space, and this in turn would increase side yard setback, which would improve fire safety for the adjacent homes. Next slide, please. The fire safety concern is more easily considered when you look at how close these homes are. My client's house is on the corner on the left, and the addition brings the homes very close together. These are small lots. Next slide, please. I also want to make sure that the City Council knows that my clients did try to meet and confer regarding this appeal and the project as this process has gone on. We actually retained a well-regarded local architect, Michael Rex, who sketched an improved design that is less expensive, improves mobility, and will result in a smaller side yard encroachment. And the other side was not willing to meet and discuss it. Next slide, please. The accessibility support for the project is also in question because the main living floor is not accessible from the driveway or garage. There are steep, non-conforming stairs externally, and there's no internal changes to increase mobility. There's also no request for an elevator ramp or other mode of enhancing accessibility on the main living floor. Next slide, please. The harm to the neighbors is evident in that fire safety is not an individual effort. Both the distance between homes and the materials are important and enhance safety. A recent article talks about how important it is to have an entire neighborhood fire hardened. And here the project is not being required to use fire hardening materials, and the distance between the homes is deficient and encroaching setbacks. And so the safety of my clients and the neighbors is impacted. Next slide, please. The neighbors on either side of the project have both gone through recent remodels that required them to harden their homes, and that work is less effective if the home in between them is very close to their homes and not fire hardened. It should also be pointed out that these homes back up to a eucalyptus grove, and we all know that eucalyptus pose an explosive fire danger and increased risk of spread. We have asked, but the fire department has not agreed to review the plans and the smaller setback for fire safety. We ask that the fire department review this as part of the interactive process that the city is required to undergo as it looks to approve a reasonable accommodation request. Next slide, please. The findings that cannot be made here are 2, 3, and 4. 2 is whether the request for accommodation is necessary to make specific housing available to an individual with a disability. And here the requested accommodation, or at least all of the accommodations, are not necessary. For example, the oversized dining room or a bay window does nothing. It has no nexus to the disability or any mobility disability. 3 cannot be met because there are alternative accommodations, and we asked and were provided with no evidence that staff reviewed that, and a public records request shows that no alternative designs were provided. And finding number 4 cannot be met because the request does impact surrounding uses of property and impacts specifically fire safety of surrounding homes. Next slide, please. If you look at HUD guidance, it says that not every reasonable accommodation request may be granted. And it provides specific guideline that says that there is a need to show that the requested accommodation has an identifiable relationship between the accommodation and the individual's disability. And the housing provider can deny a request for a reasonable accommodation if there is no disability-related need for the accommodation. Here, there are problems with certain elements that certainly could be denied, and the bay windows is just the most glaring, obvious example of that. Next slide, please. Appellant is requesting that the city grant the appeal. There is a required interactive process to improve plans before approval. That does not appear to have been done. We ask that there be examination by council and staff of the nexus to the disability, and that the accommodations be necessary and that options be considered that results in less hardship to the neighbors. We appreciate that staff has not done many of these. It sounds like none of these. These are pretty unusual, and yet that doesn't excuse the required review that the city must undertake. We also ask that there be review by the fire department. That's important. These homes are close to each other. They're surrounded by eucalyptus grove, and the materials are being exempt from being home hardened. Regarding the ADU, the plans need to be resubmitted. The resolution specifically says the plans are approved as submitted, and the plans include the ADU. And now staff has said in the staff report to you that that was not intended, and that the addition will have to be shown to be supported at some later point in time, and that's not acceptable, and that skips an obvious step of approval. We also ask that the application of the fire code to a substantial remodel be applied if the ADU is planned, and a condition of approval should clarify that future construction of an ADU within 3 years will require retrofit for building codes. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And if I have any additional time, I'd love to have it as a rebuttal if that's available. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you being online in case there are additional questions from the council. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, the applicant, if you would like, you also have 10 minutes. We invite you to come and speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Commission members, council members. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss with you our reasonable accommodation. My husband, Habib Hastei, has post-polio syndrome. This is an ADA designated disability, mobility disability. He contracted this as an infant. He has an atrophied leg and muscular disability. The neighbors are not the people to make a determination about a person with disability. Imagine if you had to walk with one leg, with a leg that doesn't, it looks like two legs. People who are temporarily able-bodied have a hard time understanding another person's disability, and they're certainly not in a position to determine if someone has a disability or not. This is clear. It's a progressive. He has post-polio syndrome. It's progressive. I watched over the decades as it has deteriorated. Now, let me speak to the dining room. The dining room, in this letter, they called it a luxury. This dining room with the proposed dining area has a 5-foot distance on each side of our current dining table. That is the ADA guidelines for room movement around a dining room table. That he has fallen multiple times in recent years because he doesn't have the facility. He not only has a cane, he has a brace on his ankle leg brace that the neighbors don't see. But that helps with stability, but it doesn't help with flexibility. He clearly needs this space to walk around the dining room. The only way to do that is to build this extra space. As for the bay window, it doesn't extend into the setback. It is placed there because it was part of the design. They didn't say anything about the extended bedroom and master bath. Those are clearly spaces that need to be added. And it puzzles me that there's this comment that we didn't think about an elevator. There's a place in the design you can see. It says that where the The reason we're covering the enclosing the current porch is to make a foyer off of which will be an elevator as in the plan. That elevator then goes to the garage, the lower level garage, which makes it possible to move up and down between these two floors because the house is a single floor, save the garage. So as you can see, these are very modest requests to make this livable for Habib, to make it safe for him at our own expense and in our own home. And this is progressive. He's been told that he can anticipate using a wheelchair. So now, but even without that, just with a walker, which he uses sometimes when he's feeling particularly weak, or with a cane and the orthosis, he needs this extra space. So we're asking for very modest changes. Now let's talk about the distance to the neighbor's house. To the 127, which is the northwest, this 4-foot extension does not put us any closer to that house because their house is at an angle. So it doesn't make it any closer. For the dining room, we would still be 20 feet from the other neighbor's home. So we're not getting close to people's space. And as for the ADU, and actually was not approved. I think it's a misrepresentation to suggest that it was. Let me read from the report, from the last report. It says, in the approval, possible timing of ADU on project. The accessory dwelling unit shown on the plan set appears to structurally support the proposed addition on the northwest side of the project. If the ADU is not included in the plan submitted for building permit review, the planning division may require amended support. And then it goes on to say that the attached ADU is subject to ministerial review and not a part of the approved reasonable accommodation. So there's no lack of clarity here. It's stated 3 times that this doesn't include it. We did put it there thinking we would as an attached ADU, but if we don't build an attached ADU, then we would just build a structure straight down because we could go straight down from that because the bedroom's on the second level because the garage is under the bedroom. So it would be, again, we're asking for very modest accommodations. We're saddened that this has taken time because all of this building takes time, and to have it delayed when someone is trying to claim or suggest that Habib's disability is not related to what we're asking for, to what we built, is to us hard to understand. So we would just appreciate your understanding. We hope you'll look at this again. It's quite clear in the plan that there is a plan for an elevator and that these modest modifications are necessary so that so that Habib can be comfortable and safe in his own home. Thank you.
Thank you. So as per the procedure, the appellant, I don't want to keep saying that. The appellant is allowed an additional 2 minutes, and that's just part of the procedure. So you may have those 2 minutes now. Is that correct, City Attorney? Sorry.
That's correct. The appellant was granted 10 minutes and only used 8 minutes of their time. So there's 2 minutes remaining to rebut if they wish.
So can I just have, because this is a very unusual circumstance, as Director Hinkle said in the beginning. I also noticed that the applicant didn't use their full time. So is this, then does it keep going back and forth is my point. I just want to have absolute clarity.
I would suggest that you open the public hearing and allow comment from anyone else who's present so that if the applicant and the appellant wish to use the remainder of their time, they would be able to respond to the others in the room as well.
So were you saying to do that rather than having the appellant have 2 minutes right now?
Yeah, I mean, you could invite her to speak now, but knowing Ms. Breckus, I think she'd probably rather wait to hear what people have to say because she might wish to respond to that as well.
Ms. Breckus, you have a choice. You can have your 2 minutes now. I guess your public comment now versus later.
Correct.
Can you hear us?
I can, yes. I'll follow public comment if I may.
Okay, thank you. So I'll bring it back to the council for questions only, and I'm going to start with questions myself. Being that this is such an unusual situation for the council, been doing council work for over a decade, and I actually can't even think of a time that this has come forward. So my question is, this is a very specific body of law, ADA, reasonable accommodation request. It's very specific. So I'm curious or wondering if how the council or how we can be supported in that conversation, knowing that when it's reasonable accommodation, there's privacy that is granted towards the applicant and towards people that I don't think people are forced to disclose. Although, of course, the applicant was very forthcoming in her testimony, but I am curious about that.
So I'll respond, and I also want the council to know that outside counsel Connor McLean is present this evening on Zoom. And so I'll respond briefly and then invite Connor if he has more to add. Mayor Kate, you're correct that in a circumstance like this, the applicant's entitled to privacy in connection with their healthcare information. Here, the applicant has elected to disclose a substantial amount of information in support of the reasonable accommodation request. And so at this juncture, the council, sitting as a quasi-adjudicatory body, would need to determine whether it has sufficient information to make a decision whether to grant or deny the appeal. And if the council felt that it still needed more information, we could talk about that. But right now, unless Connor has more to add, I think we should just move on to more questions, public comment, more comments from the applicant and the appellant if they wish to make any. And then if the council feels like it's able to vote with what, or deliberate and vote with the information they have, that would be great. If not, we can talk about it further. But I hope that responds to your question.
No, that's helpful, and I appreciate you being here, Connor, because we want to have accurate information. Obviously, accessibility for members in our community is very important to us. So you will help guide us in this conversation. I have one additional question before I open up to my colleagues. There was a comment by the appellant that an interactive process requirement. Could you speak to that? Again, I don't know if that's part of the reasonable accommodation procedure.
It is, but I think it would be helpful to have Connor describe further what the law requires and also how it was adhered to by the city in this instance.
Thank you. Connor, if you could answer that.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Kate, for asking. Both the ADA and the municipal code require that when an applicant applies for a reasonable accommodation request, city staff engage in what is called under the ADA an interactive process with the applicant. That process involves gaining information about the applicant's disability to understand how the requested accommodation is related to the applicant's disability, and that's what's called nexus, that relationship between the disability and the request. That process did happen here. And again, that sort of information that involves specific health information about an individual's disability is not, it's confidential information. And so I think that sort of one thing that appellants bring up here is that they are not necessarily aware of exactly what happened during that interactive process. But the thing about that process is that it's confidential. As Rob pointed out, the applicant has actually been very forthcoming with information. You just heard Ms. Underwood speak about her husband's disability. There was some information that was shared during the Planning Commission meeting as well, and in written comments submitted prior to the Planning Commission hearing. That information is information that we can discuss here tonight now that it's in the public record. But any additional information that the city knows of, including information that was learned during, more specific information about the disability that was learned during that interactive process, is not information that we can, that staff are going to be able to share publicly during this meeting. And I also want to highlight, this meeting is, we can discuss the information that Ms. Underwood has shared with us to date publicly, but this is not a hearing where we are putting the applicant sort of on any sort of trial to question their disability. That would be information, if the council wanted to, would get sort of in its own interactive process privately outside of this meeting with the applicant. though there is a lot of information in the record that we can go on tonight.
Thank you. No, that's helpful. And so I just want to summarize, make sure I heard this correctly. The applicant in this case was forthcoming and they provided additional information that they were not required to under the reasonable accommodation request law, but they have given that information in a public setting in order to assist the city council in the conversation. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor Kate. They have been very generous with the amount of information that they have chosen to provide, and they were not required under ADA law to do that.
Can I, because I think there could be a little confusion. It's clear to both you and Connor, but I'd like to make clear to everyone this distinction. All of the information that the applicant believes to be supportive of their reasonable accommodation request was required to be disclosed confidentially during the interactive process. The generosity, if you will, that's being referenced in terms of what the applicant elected to publicly disclose is what we're now referencing, that Ms. Underwood could have, had she selected, gotten up and said nothing really about anything about the nature of her spouse's disability, just as she and her spouse could have chosen to do that at the Planning Commission meeting. Instead, they decided to disclose certain information in support of their application, which they were not required to do and that they elected to do on their own. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Thank you for that clarity. I'll turn to my council members for questions. Councilmember Hill, we'll start with you.
Yeah, if I may, what I'd like to do is actually move through the 4 points that were brought up by the appellant. The first one is around nexus. In your presentation, Renee, I didn't recall hearing what I saw in the staff report or read in the staff report, rather that that there are, and it had to do with disclosures, that Public Records Act's requests are exempted for information that are related to that interaction or that interactive session. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit further, because it was in the staff report, but not in your presentation.
Sure, just how that process works.
Yeah, like why is it exempt in that it was exempted legally?
The information exempt from being disclosed.
Correct, because I think what I heard in the appellant's testimony was that a PRA was filed and none was provided to show something. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
I think I'd invite the lawyers to take that one, and Connor's kind of batting cleanup on this. So Connor, do you want to explain how the Public Records Act applies to a request for disability accommodation?
Yes.
Information provided by the applicant, please.
Yes, so similar to how private health and disability information is confidential under the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, that same information is protected from disclosure under the Public Records Act. So if someone submits a request for an item such as a reasonable accommodation request, that again has to do with the ADA, the information related to the disability, which is going to be a lot of the information that's learned during the interactive process, is going to be confidential and not actually subject to release under the Public Records Act.
And so just to confirm that it is under the determination of staff in the position to have that privileged information to be able to determine nexus or not.
That's right. So staff, and again, working with lawyers the whole time, review the information that they learn from the applicant, compare it to the requirements under the ADA and under the municipal code to see whether the criteria for granting a reasonable accommodation request are met, and then make a decision of whether there's nexus and whether the other factors are satisfied.
Thank you, Connor. Moving to the alternative designs, what I heard from the appellant's attorney is that there were no alternative designs. She didn't say it exactly this way, but 1, 2, 3, and 4 were explicitly shown. But what I'm hearing is that that alternatives were discussed and looked through. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that process and how alternatives were looked at, just so we have a better sense of that?
So as mentioned, there are not on file distinct alternatives, 1, 2, 3, 4 per se. We did talk very extensively with the applicants. Our review of alternative possibilities was surrounded more about the constraints of the site and the needs of the applicant for their disclosed disability. We heard from them that there were how they were accommodating those needs and the site in their design, and therefore understood that there was no real alternative other than minor modifications that may be made during the building permit process, which is standard for most projects like this in design.
And then following up, because what I heard from the appellant's attorney was, hey, we provided an alternative design, it wasn't considered. Is it unusual or normal for if it an applicant to say that they are obliged to consider outside designs in that way? Is that normal or unusual?
I'll take that one if I'm a council member, and I'll invite Connor to speak as well. But I think what Renee's getting at is in the interactive process, one aspect of the interactive process typically is that alternatives are discussed to probe the request for accommodation and determine what alternatives might be available. It's not a process that anybody runs, whether a neighbor or an appellant or anyone other than the two parties involved, in this case, the city and the applicant, but informed by, possible alternatives, as was the case here. I would expect that all alternatives that could be considered would have been considered, and then the conclusion drawn that Renee just did. Connor, do you have more on that?
Yeah, I would just like to add that, neither the ADA nor the municipal code require, when considering alternatives, the submission of any actual written alternative plan. It can all be just discussion. And really critically here, we have the appellant mentioning that they wanted to work with the applicants. They hired an architect who submitted, plans that they view are better alternative plans. Nothing in the ADA or the municipal code requires an applicant for a reasonable accommodation request to work with others to accommodate their desired vision for the accommodation. The vision of the ADA is that the best person to know what the best accommodation is for their disability is the person with the disability. And to let other people say, no, well, actually, this design may be better for you, goes against the ADA. So I want to highlight that the alternative design examination really, like Rob said, is a process that involves discussion between the city and the applicant and no other parties.
Thank you, Connor. Thank you. I keep looking at Renee, so thank you for just picking it up. I'll just look at all of you in the future. Fire hazard risk was the third topic that was raised as part of the appellant's arguments. With respect to fire hazard risk, the appellant is indicating that it creates significant fire risks. I see fire risk. Obviously, we're all aware of what has happened in Southern California, so it is top of mind. However, I am relying on staff to walk us through, what is our code and is the design compliant with code? So I think that the answer is yes, but I'd like to just ask it and have some elaboration.
I can speak to that process in the city. So when we have any design review come in, what we're looking at is, especially in a case like this, the zoning at the site and the constraints due to setback, et cetera. These plans do get initially reviewed by building and planning, but their primary comments come when the construction level plans are submitted. So the next step for these plans they would be to a construction level, which would get heavily reviewed by our fire department and our building division to comply with current codes for fire and safety. Past that, I will pass that on to the attorney beyond that.
Connor, did you have anything more on that?
I don't have more to add on that, no.
Okay. So if I can play back what I heard is that now is not the time to examine fire code, that is in a subsequent part of the process.
Yes, that will be heavily examined in the building permit process.
Thank you. And then on to...
I would also like to point out, Renee, the fire department reviewed these plans already and okayed and said that they looked good. Is that not right?
They gave initial comments to the plans.
Yeah.
Fire department's initial comments for design review is general based on residential construction. So what they received were guidelines that they'll have to meet when they do the building plans, but there were no red flags noted, for lack of a better word.
So just to add on that for when they are routed to the fire department, typical responses, we'll take a look at this when you submit your building permit, because that's when the technical plans of the siting typologies is selected there. So at this one, it's still conceptual for design review, but then when they actually, the material selections are done for the construction level, that's when they'll evaluate that, and that's actually building code and fire code together.
And then on the fourth turnaround due process, some points were brought up. I don't know if you could respond to the due process comments that were raised earlier.
That's a Connor question.
I'll answer those. Yeah. Thank you, Councilmember. I'm not quite sure I understand the due process arguments. Honestly, they don't make a ton of sense to me. I think maybe there's confusion here by the appellants about how city council hearings and planning commission hearings are run. They took issue with the fact that there was a staff report issued for the planning commission to review and for the city council to review, in addition to what was prepared when the reasonable accommodation request was initially granted. My response to that is standard procedure. That is how these meetings are run. Each time an item is appealed to a higher body, another staff report is issued, often with greater detail. And I think that there was also a concern or displeasure with the fact that the staff report was not available for the appellants to review weeks in advance. And again, that's just not what is required by state law. Government Code Section 54957.5 governs public hearing processes and requires that staff reports be published at least 72 hours before meetings. The staff reports were published on time, and so there's just not a due process issue here.
Thank you, Connor. Thank you for letting me go top to bottom.
No, that was incredibly helpful, but maybe there's some more questions still. Councilmember Lorenz Gulati.
I think most of my questions got covered. I just want one quick confirmation. This plan does not include the ADU.
I can speak to that, yes. So the outline of the ADU is included in the plan set that was provided to us. As previously mentioned, this is not a construction level set. This is a set based on the design review and to be able to review this a reasonable accommodation request. The ADU cannot be approved in a discretionary process. It is a ministerial review by state law. I won't speak to the exact state law. And so that will go through its own separate process. It may be a part of the overall plan set that they submit to building. It may be entirely separate process. So while it is not removed from the plans because the addition to the bedroom and the bathroom does sit on top of it, it is the reason that we added the condition that should the ADU not be constructed or not be constructed in sequence with the addition that an alternative plan be shown how that addition would be supported.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Kurtz.
No further questions.
Yeah, no, excellent question asking. I will open the public comment on this item, and I really appreciated Renee's last comment because what's before us is the discussion about the reasonable accommodation request. We are not talking about specific planning documents, as it were. So thank you for that reminder. I'll open this up to the public, and as always, you're invited but not required to say your name and what part of San Rafael that you live in.
Good evening. My name is Craig Yates. I'm a licensed contractor. I've been for over 50 years, and I know the accessibility situations. What I haven't heard is, did they incorporate Title 24, which supersedes ADA from 1974 to 1990? So there's many things there. If you look up Title 24, that'll supersede what ADA specifies. So that's my suggestion. Take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. We'll get all the public comment and then we'll have staff respond to any questions that come up. Any other public comment on this item in the room? No, and Ms. Breckus, did you want to take some time? Is she still there?
I'm here and I would like to be heard.
Okay, go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Well, The first comment I want to make is that, regarding whether you're supposed to be looking at the plans, and the answer is yes, because the resolution that has been appealed specifically approves the plans as submitted. So you can't consider this appeal without considering the plans as submitted. And the plans as submitted include the ADU. And without the ADU, we have an addition that needs to be supported. And like you, Mayor, having done 12 years as a planning commissioner, I can tell you I've never approved a plan that doesn't include the materials and the manner of which they would be supported for an addition. And so here we have a deficient plan because there is no we don't know what materials and we don't know how the bedroom addition will be supported without the ADU, which staff has indicated in its staff report that it's not going to be presently contemplated this time. And we've heard that from the applicants as well. Regarding the bay window, as we just heard from the applicant, that was a design choice. That is not an ADA request. And it should not be part of this reasonable accommodation. It cannot be part of the reasonable accommodation because there's no ADA accommodation basis to support it. So there is a problem that's there. Additionally, what we haven't heard from staff, and I think it's important to get clarity, is that if the ADU is built, or if it's built within 3 years, home hardening has to be done, and that has not been done. And then in addition, I just want to point out that this is, and the interactive process requires that alternatives be looked at. And you haven't heard any discussion of the alternatives. And as to due process, to not be able to understand what alternatives were looked at and for you not to know about them means that you are not doing your independent review process under appeal and considering what alternatives could be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment in the room before I close the public comment on this item? Okay. No further comment? Okay.
Could you give staff just one moment, please, Mayor Kate?
Okay, I'm still going to go ahead and close the public comment.
Yeah.
I'm going to close the public comment and staff is going to have a moment.
Thanks. So, Mayor Kate, we do have a couple more items that we'd like to address that came up during the arguments.
Okay.
So I would invite Connor to talk about Mr. Yates's comments about Title 24. Also explain, I think that's probably sufficient unless he heard something else he thinks there's a need to respond to, and then also some comments about the bay window. So Connor, I think you were taking notes. Why don't you go ahead?
City Attorney, if I may. So in addition to the Title 24, the other two comments were around whether the ADU needed to have building documents
Correct.
as part of this. And then the final was the home hardening.
Right,
part
I
of
couldn't
the
read my
process.
own notes. I wrote ADA instead of
Okay.
ADU. Yes, I would request that Connor please
Okay.
speak to the ADU and Title 24, and then we'll invite Renee to speak
To the home
regarding
hardening.
the
Okay.
bay window.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you all. Regarding the ADA, Title 24 it is a building code title in California. It does not supersede the ATA. It supplants ADA. It makes the ADA stronger. I'm not quite sure what the public comment was referencing, but I don't think that Title 24 is really an issue here, except for when the final building plans are reviewed and approved. And again, that will happen at the building permit review stage. And that's when we make sure that Title 24 is all complied with. And there's a lot of energy standards, et cetera, in there. Regarding what was the second thing? I'm so
The
sorry.
ADU.
ADU and.
The ADU, oh yes.
The council needed the building documents in order to make a decision.
Yes, Ms. Underwood highlighted the section of the Planning Commission documents that specifically mentioned that construction of the ADU is in the conditions of approval for the reasonable accommodation request. The conditions of approval mention that the ADU would support structurally from the ground floor the bedroom addition, and that if that ADU were not applied for and approved, then the reasonable accommodation request regarding the bedroom would need to come back to the planning staff for re-review to approve a different, potentially alternative version of that, which Ms. Underwood said could potentially be 4-foot supports on the back of the house if the ADU is not applied for or approved. As both Renee and Ms. Underwood have highlighted, the ADU was not part of what was approved either by staff or by the Planning Commission. Ms. Underwood stated that she's not even sure if they're going to apply for the ADU at this stage. It's really not at issue here. It's not part of the reasonable accommodation request that the council is reviewing, and it's not what was approved, contrary to what appellant may believe. And I'll leave it to Renee to add anything else she may have.
Thank you. Renee, if you could answer on anything else you want to add, and then the home hardening comment about.
The home hardening comment, I will pass back to Connor, but I will speak to the bay window.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
So the bay window was included in the reasonable accommodation request due to the inclusion of it as part of the design of those modifications, as opposed to the ADU, which is a separate process. The bay window would likely be included in the entire design review. The bay window itself, there was not a reason given for it for ADA reasons, but it is an architectural feature of the home, would very likely comply with all of our city regulations in terms of zoning, and unlike the reasonable accommodation request, which includes some otherwise elements that would require exceptions, the bay window likely would not and could potentially go through a ministerial process should that be singularly applied for. So it was included, but it's correct that there is not an direct ADA correlation.
Thank you. And then Connor, did you want to answer the home hardening? It was stated that was a requirement.
Yes. The home hardening issue is something that will come up later during the building permit application stage. Home hardening has to do with potentially retrofitting. It has to do with what materials are used during construction. And like Micah said earlier, those are items that we just don't have information on at this stage. The reasonable accommodation request is a sort of a higher level thing. And once that gets approved at a later stage when the development permits or the building permits are pulled, those issues are addressed and resolved.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions that have come up from the council? So I'll turn to my colleagues to respond, and I'm going to speak first. So this is a very unusual situation, as Director Hinkle started out by laying the groundwork at the very beginning, that to have this come all the way to the city council is incredibly unusual. And I'm sorry that it's come this far, because neighbor disputes or conflict, we always hope can be resolved outside of this forum. So I want to recognize just the impact on all the individuals involved who have gone through this, because we know that's not an easy thing. For me, I support denying this appeal. When I look at the 4 items that Councilmember Hill so carefully had staff walk through, the nexus, I find when it comes to ADA law, and you've been very forthcoming, and thank you to Connor for your guidance on this, there could be additional information that would have been possibly disclosed to staff. To me, what I've heard today in even the open forum is sufficient. And who am I to say what design should be done for this home, for the occupants of this home? And I do understand that there is a process we have gone through, and I understand the 4 points that have been given for us to review. And I feel confident that the alternative design, everything has met the letter of the law. And I would say the spirit of the law, although the appellant may disagree on that, but I really feel like we have met each of those. So the next is the alternative design, the fire hazard. We are fully focused on having all of our homes throughout San Rafael hardened appropriate. No one is getting special treatment any which way, and that will happen in due course regardless of anyone's current remodel. And then in terms of due process, I am satisfied from looking at the documentations and from hearing staff that we have gone through due process. I will turn to my colleagues for their additional comments, and I'll start with Councilmember Kurtz.
Thank you. I also support denying the request or I think that's deny the appeal. Thank you. I have a friend who had actually built a fully accessible home for her daughter who's in a wheelchair, and it's gorgeous, and it was a lot of work to get there, and the process was hard, but necessary, and it's beautiful. And so thank you for continuing to work through us, because I know some people would just go without having to go through the whole process. Really appreciate the work the city and the staff have done, the full review and the evaluation, and our packet. Our packet was huge, and the level of detail and information provided to us. We're not the experts, but boy, if we understood all of those details, it was there. In relation to the fire concerns, I hope everyone, whether you're doing a new building, remodeling, I really encourage everyone to go to Zone 0 using the materials that fit the IBHS. You're going to ask what that stands for. The standards. Really to do that now, because the laws will be coming to support that and make that mandatory for everyone. But for everyone's safety, if your home is done to Zone 0, that's important. It's important to do that. And I have a feeling, depending on how this goes, your changes to your home may be done before our ordinances are done. And that's really important for everyone just to follow those rules. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lorenz Gulati.
I actually have no comments. Thank you so much for all the report and all the information.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill.
Yeah, thank you, staff, and thank you, Connor, for joining us, as well as the applicants and the appellant. This is an unusual matter, and as the mayor indicated, it is regrettable when neighbors are unable to come to agreement on things, but this is how it arrives before the council. So I too will be supporting the denial of the appeal of upholding the Planning Commission approval of reasonable accommodation. I thank you, staff, our city attorney, and Connor for helping walk through that. I do think that Nexus and the way that Nexus is established, I'm satisfied. The alternative design approach, I'm satisfied. Fire hazard, I'm satisfied that this is addressed in a process further down. And then as far as due process, I'm also satisfied that staff and the city have followed due process. So thank you all for showing up, and I'll be making my vote.
Thank you. And thank you, Connor, for helping guide us in this situation. We appreciate it. Councilmember Hill, you practically read the motion. Would you be so kind as to make a motion on this item, please?
Thank you. I move that we adopt the resolution to deny the appeal and uphold the Planning Commission's approval of reasonable accommodation request at 131 Bellevue Avenue.
Second.
Moved and double seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Lorenz Gulati.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 4-0. We have another agenda item this evening. It is the Community Development Block Grant. We'll take a moment so staff can rearrange themselves. Welcome, Lily. I look over as Marin County is in the house. Welcome. So Alexis Campantanian is getting ready for the staff report. And I see that Lily Thomas with Marin County is with us as well. So. Oh, wait, hit the, there we go.
While she's getting ready, as you said, Lily Thomas with the County of Marin, I wanted to thank you for your words earlier at the beginning of the meeting. That was my community, and it definitely is touching all of us. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Kate and City Council members. I'm Alexis Captanian. I'm the housing manager for the city, and I'm here presenting the Community Development Block Grant funding recommendations for fiscal year 2025 and 2026, here with Lily Thomas from the County of Marin. So the Community Development Block Grant Program, or CDBG, is a federal funding program that supports local affordable housing projects, infrastructure and public facility upgrades, and support services. Through a cooperative agreement, the County of Marin is authorized to manage CDBG funds on behalf of the City of San Rafael. And under that agreement, Marin County is divided into 3 planning areas, including San Rafael, Novato, and the rest of the county. Funding is divided formulaically within the 3 areas based on factors including population, overcrowding, and poverty. And you can see here the percentages of the allocation for the 3 planning areas. To allocate these funds on an annual basis, the San Rafael City Council submits recommendations for its portion of funds to the countywide priority setting committee, which is made up of city and town council members, a county supervisor, and community members representing protected classes under fair housing laws. San Rafael City Council member Rachel Kurtz currently serves on the Priority Setting Committee. The Priority Setting Committee in turn provides recommendations for the 3 planning areas to the Marin County Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors reviews recommendations from the Priority Setting Committee and forwards its recommendations to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for authorization. So here I just want to point out we have funding amounts on the screen based on those percentage allocations. These are actually from last year. We don't yet, and this is typical in the last couple of years, we don't yet have the finalized numbers from HUD, but we are operating under the assumption that the funding will be about the same as last year. If that allocation is not as anticipated, staff will be able to adjust funding recommendations proportionately. So the Priority Setting Committee works with county staff to evaluate applications received based on national program objectives and locally established funding priorities. Those include the national objectives for the program include benefiting low and moderate income persons, preventing or eliminating blight, and meeting other community development needs for low and moderate income persons. Local priorities include advancing fair housing, serving members of protected classes, and serving low-income persons. And the projects are evaluated based on criteria including readiness, sustainability, effectiveness, and accountability and impact. There are also a few local priorities that are specific to the 3 categories. So for housing, the local priorities include family housing and land trust models in Eastern Marin, providing homeownership opportunities. In the public services category, locally established priorities include children, youth, and parent support services, as well as housing support services. There are a few requirements for the allocations and the way they're divvied up. Per HUD regulation, a maximum of 15%, or this year, $72,500, can be used for public services. A minimum of $200,000 must be spent on housing, and then the remaining $208,000 and change can be spent on either housing or capital projects. There is also a minimum grant size per project per year of $15,000. Okay, so moving into the recommendations, this is the affordable housing category. There were 4 housing projects that applied for funding. With the funds available, staff is recommending funding for 3 projects totaling $219,000. Those projects include the Marin Villas Rehabilitation Project, which is full renovation of 2 units and bathroom upgrades for 2 additional units at a 4-unit affordable rental property in San Rafael. Canal Alliance has owned the property for over 20 years, and they're going to provide temporary relocation during construction. Also, the Marin County Home Rehab Program, which provides 0 interest deferred loans to rehab approximately 20 low-income owner-occupied homes across the county. This supports essential repairs, including roofing, plumbing, ADA accessibility modifications. And then lastly, the Redwood Boulevard Project. This is for pre-development activities for a proposed 80-unit affordable homeownership development in Novato that includes 2, 3, and 4-bedroom units for families earning between 60% and 90% of area median income. San Rafael's contribution demonstrates regional collaboration to increase affordable housing options within Marin County. For the capital improvements category, staff is recommending supporting both San Rafael area relevant projects, including the Ritter Builds Hope Capital campaign, which is to renovate and upgrade the Ritter Center facility at 800 A Street in San Rafael to expand healthcare, behavioral health, and supportive housing services for low-income and homeless residents. Improvements include ADA accessibility enhancements, trauma-informed counseling spaces, energy-efficient system upgrades, and exterior facade improvements. And then also the New Beginning Center infrastructure repairs. This involves critical repairs and upgrades to Marin County's largest emergency shelter in Novato, including roof replacement, interior-exterior painting, bathroom safety improvements, and installation of an emergency backup generator system to ensure continuous operation during power outages. Finally, in the public services category, I want to note we received 15 applications from organizations serving San Rafael requesting over $930,000 in CDBG funding. San Rafael has under $73,000 to allocate, so it's a tight category. Based on the established priorities and evaluation criteria, staff recommends 4 projects to receive funding, including Legal Aid of Marin's Keeping Marginalized Marin Tenants Housed, which provides legal advocacy, education, and outreach to prevent eviction and housing discrimination for low-income tenants, including seniors, immigrants, and individuals with disability. Residential Access Modification Program with the Marin Center for Independent Living, which provides home modifications such as ramps, grab bars, and stair lifts to increase accessibility and housing stability for residents with disabilities. One Cozy Bed, which distributes beds and bedding to vulnerable families transitioning into permanent housing. And then Pickleweed Preschool, which provides affordable early childhood education for 68 children in the Canal neighborhood. This funding would help retain a key staff position after the loss of state funding. So staff are recommending that the City Council adopt the resolution recommending CDBG project funding for this fiscal year to the Marin County Board of Supervisors. The council may approve alternative allocations of CDBG funding, but note that the public services category cannot exceed $72,515. That concludes my presentation. Again, we have Lily Thomas with the Marin County Housing and Federal Grants Division here, as well as, is Chris on the?
Yes.
And Chris Miranda, who's a planner with the Marin County Housing Division. Both are here to answer questions you have along with myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I don't know if Councilmember Kurtz has any questions, but being that you're on the committee, do you have?
No real questions.
Okay,
I'll say for comments.
Okay, we'll start you with comments. Councilmember Hill.
Yes, thank you so much for the staff report, and thank you, Lily, for representing the county today, as well as Chris on the line. So my question is, and maybe this is, I'm asking you to look into the future. I do think that we all suspect that there's great instability in funding, that it's not likely to go up. If anything, it's going to go down. And do we have a sense of how far down it could go?
Let me just check my crystal ball here, but I would say there has been a steady decline in the funding for CDBG since the high point was actually in 1994. And so it has gone down slightly since then.
In the continuing resolution that was passed, CDBG was kept flat except for some add-ons, some kind of set-asides that were part of it, but the entitlement funds are flat for this year. So although we have not received our allocation, we're expecting that this year it will be flat. If you look back at the first Trump administration, the proposal was to completely cut and eliminate both the CDBG and the home program, which is the other federal grants that we administer for the whole county. And actually that first year we ended up getting a slight increase. I don't expect that to happen next year. I think that there could be a really significant cut next year if we think about what's going to happen with the Section 8 voucher program, other HUD programs. HUD staff have already been reduced by almost 25% of the staffing. So there just won't be a way to administer the dollars at the level that they are. So I think that this year, because of the rush with the budget, we should expect it to be about flat. But next year, I don't think that it would. I think we should anticipate significant changes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Urans-Gulati, questions?
No questions, thank you.
So my question is just really followed on what Councilmember Hill, just to have clarity. So you started out by saying these funds are not the actual funds or what's expected, but we're still expecting this amount. And if it doesn't come through, let's say how would you take, let's say it comes through 15% lower, would you just do a 15% reduction across the board? Is that how you would do it? Okay,
So typically, we don't typically have our allocation at this point.
okay.
We should get what the amount is usually in mid-June, but just given all of the different hearings that we need to have, there isn't time for us to wait for that.
Okay.
So typically, we have language in our proposal that goes to the countywide planning setting, priority setting committee and to the board that says if our allocation comes in less or more, which sometimes it has come in more, we allocate based on, we just do a percentage across the whole
Okay.
allocations, except for the fact that none of our programs can go below 15,000. So if we have a project that we're proposing at 15,000, we wouldn't reduce that one at all. We would only reduce the larger numbers. So we keep that, just given the cost of administering and the complexity of administering these funds, $15,000 is a really small amount to be allocating, and we don't want it to go any less than that. So those ones we wouldn't reduce any further.
So, Mayor Kate, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but it's come to our attention that Councilmember Urans-Gulati has a political reform act potential conflict, which has just been noticed, and I think she should reference it and explain on the record. And if that's correct, as we'll be hearing in another matter later this evening, under these circumstances, the law requires that the council member leave the dais and leave the room and not participate in the deliberation and vote. So I'll turn it over to Councilmember Urans-Gulati on that.
Okay.
So do you want me to specify?
Yeah.
Yes, so one of the nonprofits, Marine CIL Center for Independence Living, is one of my clients. So I will recuse myself.
We will wait to continue the hearing.
So again, to be clear, under the Political Reform Act, in a situation like this, it requires the council member to both leave the dais and leave the room. We'll just ask Councilmember Urans-Gulati to make herself comfortable outside the council chambers, and then when we're concluded with this item, we'll come get her.
Thank you. May I proceed with my last part of my question? Rob? Yes, my last part of my question, or would you like me to wait?
I am, oh yeah, why don't you wait till she leaves the room?
She's good. Thank you for that clarification. So
I'm sorry for the interruption.
No, thank you. That's important. So you were talking about the $15,000 threshold, and I just wanted to be clear, that's the 15,000 in total, not San Rafael, because San Rafael on some of them is less than 15,000. Okay, I just want to clarify. Okay. We'll hope that doesn't happen, but thank you for the clarification. Not seeing any further questions at this point, I will open up the public comment on this item. If you would like to speak to the CDBG discussion and allocations, now is your opportunity. Not seeing any public comment, I will bring it back to the council. There were no questions that were raised, and I would like to turn it over to Councilmember Kurtz. Thank you for representing San Rafael on this committee.
Absolutely. And thank you. And thank you to the county and the work and also the other committee members. As you can see, the dollars, every single one of these organizations it was so hard because everyone is so good and we want to be able to give so much more. Now, am I wrong? Last year, did we actually receive some more funds? I can't remember. It's sort of a question, but I don't know if that's going to happen this year. It's more rhetorical.
Last year, we had some program income dollars that were included in the allocation. We didn't get additional funds through the CDBG program, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I mean, we'll keep my fingers crossed. I would keep waiting for more money to show, but I think the reality is it's getting harder and harder. And I think a lot of the process that the group went through in terms of identifying how do we allocate so few dollars to the organizations. And you could see we needed to, we can't give $1,000 to everyone. That doesn't work that way. We were really looking at least for me, as well as, I would share with the others, do these organizations have other opportunities that they can get funding from? How many clients do they actually touch? And then we're also having to look at the bare minimum as we move into our environment right now with the federal concern and funding situation is what are those foundational things that people in the community are going to need? And when we talk about legal services and we talk about having a mattress and we talk about, these are very, very just basic and unfortunately, I'm very happy for what we were able to do. And all of these meet so many of those needs as well. And there was only so few dollars that we could allocate. And I encourage every organization to continue applying. And we will continue going through this hard process.
Thank you. Thank you for being a part of the group that had to go through that hard process. Councilmember Hill.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. Thank you, Alexis, and thank you, Lily, for being here this evening. Prior to Councilmember Kurtz serving, I served on the Priority Setting Committee. It is a challenging role insofar as to touch on what Councilmember Kurtz indicated is that it is difficult to make these decisions, and I know staff toils over this as well. So these are precious dollars, and against the kinds of budgets that Marin has, it can seem small, but these dollars, I think, by these organizations are stretched very, very far. So I'm supportive of the priorities that the committee has set and the allocations and the organizations that staff have recommended. So I will be supporting the motion. I'm assuming Councilmember Kurtz will make the motion, but I will be seconding that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Alexis, and thank you, Lily, for coming. I also served on the CDBG committee years ago, and I think it's only gotten more and more difficult as the needs have gotten greater and the uncertainty around the federal funding. Your comments were beautiful in terms of the prioritization of these precious dollars. So here's to hoping that CDBG continues to flow because it does enable local communities to support local initiatives and projects in a way that mandated federal programs might not reach. So these dollars are very, very important to us. So Councilmember Kurtz, would you like to make this motion?
I'm happy to make the motion. Make a motion to adopt a resolution recommending Community Development Block Grant CDBG project funding for fiscal year 2025-26 to the Marin County Board of Supervisors.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Iren is absent. And Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 3-0. Thank you. Thank you for all your work. Thank you for being here. We have one more item on our agenda. Oh, can someone let
I will text her right now.
Okay. Give her time to come back in here. As people are moving and getting their new seats, the next agenda item is the 2nd Street and 4th Street intersection improvements project. This is design services agreement. Oh, wait.
Mayor Kate, item 6B includes a matter that involves the matter is within 500 feet of my property. So as Rob just mentioned not 10 minutes ago, the Political Reform Act of 1974 is very specific and says that I should disqualify myself from this matter. So I will be disqualifying myself from this matter right now.
Okay, so as your Councilmember Hill is leaving, we are inviting Councilmember Lorenz Gulati back to the dais. We do maintain a quorum on both of these agenda items, so that is very important, and I just want to highlight that.
And we still have open time for public expression after this, so I believe that Councilmember Hill intends
Don't
to
you
come
worry.
back.
He will come back. Don't worry. We know he will be here. Okay, Director Miller. Assistant Director Kwok, I see you there. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having us tonight to talk about the 2nd and 4th Street intersection project. I just want to first, this project couldn't be where it's at today without the thanks and hard work of our associate, Gray Melgard, who is out on leave the next few months, but just wanted to acknowledge them and their hard work. So City Engineer Joanna Kwok and I are going to do our best to convey what is going on with this project. So tonight's action is, and our recommendation is to authorize the city manager to execute a second amendment to the professional services agreement with the design consultant. What we're also going to do tonight is we're just going to give a brief project overview so that everyone is aware of what is the current status of the project. So this project goes back a ways. It used to be part of the 3rd Street project back in 2020, and we realized back then that the project was significantly more expensive than we could afford with the 3rd Street project, even though that was a $20 million project. So we separated the two projects, and in 2022, we applied for one Bay Area grant cycle funding, and we were thankfully awarded that for construction only. And so we started preliminary design and environmental back in 2023, and we just started kicking off the final design at the end of last year. So this project and kind of where the priority is that this project was included as part of the capital improvement program that was approved by City Council. It was also part of the City Council's fiscal year 24-25 goals and objectives. It's in the downtown precise plan. It's also in the citywide bicycle and pedestrian plan. So this is a very complicated intersection, and there's a lot of things to consider and a lot of while we're looking at the design, including I've listed on this slide some of our project goals. So one of the things that we're trying to do is improve safety for all users. We really need to maintain the traffic flow on 2nd Street / 4th Street. This is one of our major streets in the city, as everyone knows, and we need to make sure that we keep the traffic flow going. We want to reduce points of conflict, continue the bike connectivity. There was a bicycle cycle track that was built as part of the 3rd Street project, and it's missing this intersection. We also need to maintain access for transit. Our transit services go down 4th Street and make a turn there. And I'm not going to read everything else on here, but accessibility is one of them. Upgrading, we have very old infrastructure out there. We actually have 2 traffic signal cabinets, which is not common in an intersection, and just overall things that need to be upgraded. This slide is showing what the current proposed design was. This is what was shown at the bicycle and pedestrian committee back in February and the community meeting back in February. Has not been updated yet. We received a handful of comments from the community at both those meetings via email. I'm sure you saw we received lots of differing opinions on the letters received prior to this meeting. So this is kind of what the design concept that was shown and sketched for those meetings and has resulted in the comments that you've received. So a few just key highlights. This is showing on the north side, which is up on this diagram, is showing there is a slip lane there on the north side today. This is going to be a significantly slowed down and discouraged slip lane with potentially speed humps, traffic calming. We really need to maintain access to all of the businesses. That's what that lane is for. We're going to try to encourage vehicles to instead make the right turn at the traffic signal. So if they do go the other way, they're going to be going significantly slower, which will help with the conflicts between bikes and peds crossing there. So, oops. Oh, sorry, more things. There also is, what we're showing right now is an emergency access left turn only. So we're actually showing the left turn pocket being removed so that if you can see, but emergency vehicles will still be able to make the left turn. And what is instead shown there on the right side of the intersection is the crosswalk is actually moved over and is shown on the east side. And that simplifies the crosswalk. It allows for a pedestrian refuge island and could also separate phases. So if somebody can't make it completely across the intersection, they have a place to wait, press the button, and continue moving forward, which is also important to note because since one of our key goals is maintaining the east-west traffic flow, we need to be able to separate the pedestrian movement so that the signal isn't delayed and then the level of service decreases for everybody traveling in their vehicles. And I'm just doing brief overviews. So these are some of the public meetings we've had to date. This project or different, I wouldn't even say the full project, different iterations of different components of the design have gone to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee several times. It's come here a few times for the design contract. And then back in August, we reviewed the traffic analysis with BPAC to explore potentially removing the left turn pocket and impacts that would have on all users. And then in February, we really started our main outreach, which was having a community meeting and some informal site visits and providing an update with you. Okay, so we have a lot of information on our project website. There's a QR code. You can even just Google City San Rafael and 2nd and 4th, and it comes up. That's actually how I find it. And so we have 25 frequently asked questions that we heard from the community in the last couple of months that are listed on there. We also have additional traffic related questions, which are part of the project documents that we had a traffic engineer consultant review and provide comments on. So we're still reviewing. We received more comments in the last few days. So we're still reviewing those. The project has not been fully designed at this point. Our images that we've shown have been preliminary. This is just where we're looking at the project going, but nothing has been decided. We still need to look at traffic signal operations and phasing, like our horizontal layout and how that works with vehicle turning movements, final coordination with utilities. These are just a few things. And then also improvements at other locations, like if the left turn pocket is closed, how does that impact Greenfield intersection? How does that impact West Street intersection? What improvements can we do on Marquard outside of this intersection or on West End? And so there's other things at play, not just the design that we've been showing. So all these things are things that we are currently working on and exploring. It's all just been in the last month that we've received all of these comments. Sorry, not talking. Let's see. So then next steps, we have lots of coordination with utilities. We are undergrounding the last couple overhead poles with PG&E, as well as there's an AT&T utility box that we're working with them to reduce the size or relocate. We're still working on that. The project will likely come back to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee sometime in summer or fall. We usually update them before construction or when there's a final design. We're not sure when yet. And then we're kicking off the construction documents now or moving on further. The plan is to get the funding obligated and to come back to the City Council in the fall for construction award and for the final design. And then construction is, it's pending the utility undergrounding project, but we're hoping for the end of 2025 through 2026. And then there's a future gateway improvement discussions there's space for it in this project, but not the design of it. It's kind of a separate parallel path that will be happening. And so as far as the design goes, we have our city engineers, our city traffic engineers. We have 2 different design engineering consultants who are peer reviewing, asking all the right questions. We also have our civil design firm working on this. And we're really sharpening our pencils so that the final design is something that all of the design professionals are confident and comfortable with recommending, and that will, look at and take into account, all users with a focus on safety and meeting the project goals. So that's our plan, is to bring something that we're confident in when we come back to the city council in the fall. So again, tonight's action is just to authorize the city manager to execute the Second Amendment. And that is it. And we are both here to answer your questions.
Thank you. And we realized that it was a smaller agenda item, but because of the community interest, we did want to have it on the main agenda so we could get additional public comment, and the council could also ask questions and comments when the time is appropriate. So just wanted to clarify that. Questions, Councilmember Kurtz. Councilmember Yorenz Gulati.
So just to clarify, and thank you for the report, this is the approval basically for an engineer firm, which means that we don't have the design and they will be working. I mean, we just had the concept, but the design will come back to us for approval later on in the year. Is that right?
So this, so the next time we will be coming back is to award the construction contract. And when the city council approves the construction award, you also approve the plans and specs as part of that project. So that will be the next time that it will come before the city council.
So if we have this new firm, they are looking at it and they decide, oh, this needs to be repositioned or redesigned, that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's actually the existing design team. It's just we've iterated a lot with them based on public comment that we've received. And so they need we've asked them to do a lot of additional work on the project already. And so this is just to help finish the design of it. So we will be going back to BPAC if there's questions we have. That's usually where we go when we have questions or design iterations. We present it there. We'll keep the project website updated. There's a form that people want to get automatic updates. They can fill it out on the form, and then anytime the website's updated, they'll get pinged. At least that's what I'm told. If not, I send out an email too. So there's a couple of different ways people can stay up to date.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for the clarification.
And I just have one question. On one of the slides, you talked about how this project is in alignment with policies that the council has already approved through the bike-ped master plan. I know we'll be doing an update on that. My question was specifically about the local road safety plan, because this council has given a commitment to reduce KSIs, which stands for, I think, kill serious injuries, which are bike-ped car interactions. So I'm curious if I just need to hear from staff that when the design team is looking at the BPAC plan as well as the local road safety plan, because those are the guiding documents, the policy documents that we put forward. So
correct. And in the local road safety plan, it talks about the Vision Zero policies. And although we haven't directly said we do have a Vision Zero policy because we're working on Vision Zero action plan, City Council has approved local road safety plan. So yeah, Vision Zero is at the top of our list of things
this
that we're
would be
looking
in alignment with Vision Zero.
Yeah, that is our intent.
Okay. I don't have any additional questions, but there might be more questions that come up from the public. So at this time, I'll open up the public comment. And as Director Miller has already indicated, we have received some emails regarding the issues. So you're welcome to add additional comment right now if you so choose. So don't be shy, come on down. And you're not required, but invited to say your name and what part of San Rafael you live in.
Okay. I'm Teal Collins. Nice to see everybody. I'm in Sentinel Court, right there. So good evening and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here to express my strong opposition to the proposed removal of the left turn lane from 2nd Street onto Marquard Avenue. I live on Sentinel Court and I take that turn every single day to get home. Honestly, every time I make that left, I feel grateful. It's quick, convenient, and gives me direct access to my neighborhood without delay or stress. If that turn is eliminated, my only alternative is to turn left at Greenfield, which is already a difficult intersection. The wait is long due to the complex light cycle, and after turning, you're immediately trying to navigate through oncoming traffic headed towards the 2nd Street, basically. It's not only inefficient, it's potentially dangerous. What's more, the left turn lane at Greenfield only accommodates about 3 cars. Once that fills up, additional cars are left sitting in the through lane of 2nd Street where the traffic moves fast. That creates a real risk for rear-end collisions and unnecessary congestion. One of the reasons the Marquard turn works so well is the sensor light that triggers the light quickly when a car is waiting. If that turn is removed, I strongly encourage the city to install a similar sensor at the Greenfield intersection to keep traffic moving and improve safety. And while we're talking about improving flow on 2nd Street, if that's truly the goal, then I'd also suggest putting the light at East Street on a sensor. That light is often stops traffic on 2nd, even when no cars or pedestrians are waiting to cross. It creates pointless delays that could be avoided with a simple upgrade. I understand the city has broader goals for traffic flow, but I urge you to take these local real-life impacts into account. This turn is vital for residents, and removing it would do more harm than good. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Oops, my glass.
Hello, good evening. My name is Maren DeGraff and I live at 50 Fremont Road. My comments are also about the removal of the left turn lane from 2nd Street to Marquard Avenue. The city's own traffic study states that the majority of vehicles will now make the turn earlier at 2nd and West Street. This change greatly reduces safety. The left turn lane is not being eliminated. It is simply being moved 50 yards east, where cars will make the same movement across the same traffic lanes and the same bike lanes. The key difference, West Street has no traffic signal. That means drivers will now be making these turns without any protection, not for cyclists, not for pedestrians, not for themselves. This clearly increases risk to everyone. It doesn't fix a problem, it's creating a new one. If you have not personally visited the site, I implore you to. You'll see just how unsuitable West Street is for this plan. It's steep, it's narrow, and it's residential. And now, according to the city's own study, it would carry over 100 additional cars every day, becoming the main access point for the entire Hillside neighborhood. This is not realistic. This is not safe. And if this goes forward, people are going to get hurt. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hi, I'm Marley Brezzo. I'm from Upper Fremont Drive, which is up above Marquard Drive. I'd like to speak to the challenges that come with living on a difficult hill road where access is already complicated. There are a number of tight and difficult turns to make on our hill, and it limits our ability already to select contractors willing to make that trek, be able to navigate those roads. The approach from West Street that's being suggested as an alternative to the left turn off of 2nd Street is inadequate for anything with a trailer. In an SUV, it's commonly a 3-point turn. It's very acute. The approach from Greenfield has a challenge of making a right turn off of Greenfield requires that no traffic be coming in the opposite direction as the width of the road does not really well accommodate a vehicle making a right turn onto that drive. Marquard Ave is our primary access to our properties, especially for people who lack the confidence to be able to drive on our difficult hill roads. Taking it away presents a great deal of a burden for us to be able to maintain our properties, to have these different services such as arborists, repaving, retention walls that need to be rebuilt, and refuse bins for land clearing, which are annual maintenance for our properties. And what we're being asked is to remove this left turn lane, and in its place we have an island in the middle of 2nd Street, which in my opinion is one of the most vulnerable feeling portions of the current design. To be stuck in the middle of 2nd Street while traffic passes you on either side, seeing that retained and losing our left turn lane just feels like a concession that is not really returning its value. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Victoria DeWitt. I live on Fremont Road. I've lived there over 40 years, so I'm very familiar with this neighborhood. I spent a lot of time writing you a 4-page letter about why you should not remove that left turn lane. And I included some photos. I wanted to explain the photos also. They didn't really come in the same order as I listed them. The first photo attached to my letter shows a car turning from Marquard onto Fremont Road. And you can see the car has to back up. It has to be a 3-point turn because you can't make the turn in one turn unless you're in a very small car. The second photo shows Marquard at 2nd Avenue. You can see Marquard is 27 feet wide going up the hill. It really accommodates the traffic going up and coming down. It doesn't push it into the intersection. The next photo shows West End Avenue with a Cisco truck, a huge truck parked on, when I went by, no one was at the truck. It was just parked there. So, you have to ask yourself, how did that truck get there? Well, it got there because it came through the left turn lane. I don't know if a truck like that can make that U-turn from Greenfield onto West End Avenue with the congestion that results at that intersection. It certainly can't come up West Street. And then I have a picture of West Street, which shows you there's cars parked on one side. There's only about 11 feet left to accommodate two-way traffic. West Street is more likely to back up into the intersection than Marquard is. And I will say also that, oops, I'm almost out. Fremont, the intersection at Marquard and Fremont, that is a nasty intersection. And to force traffic to go down there, down west, or come up west, that has to go through Marquard and Fremont, it's just, unless you improve that intersection, there's no way you should do that. And I think the Kimley, Horn reports, I don't think they've really analyzed above Marquard. I live on Fremont. The two speakers before me live on Fremont, Upper Fremont. You have to look at the uphill side too, because the only access is from Marquard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we did receive your letter and your emails as well. Yep, go ahead. Welcome.
Hi there. My name's Dave Rhodes, and I've been living nearby for 6 years to this intersection, and I hope to live here for the next 40 years with the safe intersection. I drive, walk, or bike through this intersection 2 times daily with my small children, and I appreciate the staff, the work that everybody's done for the past 5 years and the project meetings and the iterations that have come through through these project meetings. It's obviously a super complicated intersection. It's the design that's presented is no fault to anyone's, but it's not perfect, and I don't think there is going to be a perfect design. But I do strongly encourage the city to move forward with the one we have today, the design that's presented, and obviously there likely are going to be some iterations even forward, but we should fund the completion of this design so we can get this thing built. Please do consider the people outside of vehicles when you're making this decision tonight. We've heard from folks talking a lot about convenience of them driving to their homes or their places of wherever they're going or leaving their homes, which is important. We do recognize that that's how a lot of folks have to get around. But there's also 20,000 cars that go through this intersection daily, and a lot of people do walk or bike through this intersection and need to be protected from those 20,000 vehicles. So how are we going to do that. And I think that that's something that we need to, that the city has been considering, and I appreciate that. And people walking or biking are constantly sacrificed for the convenience of people driving in cars. You know, there's not a safe route everywhere, but there's people are driving in a 5,000-pound car, safe from other cars. The West Street alternative for left turns is a challenge too, and we understand that. I understand that. But it's probably better than losing a safe crosswalk. The solution may not satisfy everyone, but we definitely need to prioritize the safety of those outside of vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, whoever is fielding those comments, thank you. I think everybody's tripping about this, right? I'm tripping about this as a bicyclist. I think a lot of people kind of see the ups and downs, and a lot of people are focusing on the downs. I think if you wanna get something that makes everyone happier or maybe safer or more satisfied is to do something different. Because basically the design is safer, right? It's a lot safer than it was or that it is and it's gonna be. But I think a roundabout would make a lot more sense. It's inclusive of this community here. That's just a total powerhouse. Wow. Y'all should come out here more. A roundabout would be inclusive of that turn. It slows down cars, but it also gets cars through the area in a smooth way. I mean, it would just be a massive roundabout. I mean, I'm no engineer, but my thought is that it is possible. It completely separates pedestrians and bicycles from those cars, making that going through that roundabout. The other thing is, so bikes, if you have the current design, bikes that do illegal stuff that they perceive to be safe, they're gonna keep doing that, right? Me personally, I use G Street. I think G Street's a lot safer, despite the glass, in the bike lane and stuff like that. I'll deal with that. It's safer than this intersection. Bicycles on Miracle Mile, I mean, we've all seen it. It's just crazy. I mean, I don't know how people even think to go straight there. Just do whatever you have to do to get cars to not go straight and go down Miracle Mile. Like I said in my message, horizontal bars that take people out, islands that take people out, whatever you got to do, they can't go down Miracle Mile. It's just way too crazy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Kate, council members. I'm Joe Mulligan, a San Rafael resident, and I'm here to also support the redesign effort for 2nd and 4th Streets. And a lot's been said already. I'm speaking mostly from a cycling perspective. And I'd like to also comment that it's a major thoroughfare for people coming from that new 2nd Street multi-use pathway going westbound into West Marin. So there's a constant flow of traffic, not just from Marin residents, but also from people coming from the city of San Francisco, as well as the East Bay, to enjoy all the beautiful bucolic roads while cycling. But not just from a cyclist perspective on the dangers of that left turn at Marquard. I mean, I do think that should be closed off. That would make it much safer. But in addition, on February 25th, I was there for the informal site visit when they had with the civil engineer. And I walked back and forth 7 times on that whole section. And when I realized that I got to the Marquard intersection, it's so dangerous that I wouldn't walk across it. And I feel like I didn't even realize how vulnerable the pedestrians are to that particular section, that intersection. And just for that reason alone, aside from the cyclists, I think that it would be very good to close that left-hand turn. So in line with the Vision Zero, I approve this and I think that it should be funded. And I really thank all of you for putting all the work to make this happen.
Thank you, Joe. Any other comments? Not seeing any other comments. I'll close the public comment. Bring it back for any additional questions the council has. There was one comment or question about a roundabout, and this is not a design meeting. I want to be very clear. It's a design contract, but I'm curious. So curious, but
Thank you for having me here tonight. I can answer that question. I think as Director Miller had mentioned, we've gone through many iterations. And for those who had joined us for BPAC earlier on, like 4 or 5 years ago, they would have noticed that a roundabout was actually one of the considerations that we made. However, there are many challenges to that, including, just not having enough right of way. And, there are also other horizontal constraints. And I think it would make it very challenging to be feasible. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess specifically on the right of way, just for people who don't understand what that means, we would have to actually purchase properties and likely portions of probably 4 different properties, including probably knocking out the bilingual school in the corner completely, because they're standard design features. And so it would be not only cost prohibitive, but it just doesn't seem like a decision or direction we wanted to head in.
Thank you, because I do remember seeing that design many years ago at BPAC, so thank you for that. Unless there are additional questions, I would entertain comments on this item. Councilmember Kurtz, would you like to go ahead?
No, I appreciate, I mean,
A question?
I thought, yeah.
Oh, you had a question?
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead. I apologize.
Yeah, no. And so one of the questions, I guess, is like, is to, if you were to eliminate the left turn on the other stoplight, it was to put one of those sensor stoplights based on the cars that they are going. Is that like a practical solution, or will that really slow down the traffic on the main streets?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in one of my slides, we're exploring the impacts of the other intersections, which are the Greenfield and the West Street intersection, and looking at, how many vehicles per day make that left turn. There was mention of the turn pocket not being big enough, so we're looking at what is the design standard for the number of vehicles that are existing, and plus the added vehicles. So we're exploring that, and also how the traffic signal operates, and, there's different ways the signal can operate. We do actually have a MyoVision camera at the Greenfield intersection. We just haven't gone into extensive detail on the timing and looking at the intersection. But that is one of them, as well as looking at West Street and, like I said, Marquardt, West End, all of those different areas.
Great, thank you.
And if I could just briefly add to April's response, the complexity of this project is, it's really complicated, and the staff are doing an incredible job trying to take into consideration all of the community's concerns and work with the traffic engineers. Given the nature of how complex it is, staff will be meeting with each of the council members before this comes forward for a construction contract, so that you have an opportunity to do a deeper dive and understand the nuances, because it is one lever, you solve one problem, you create 2 others, and the final solution really needs to be, the greater good, if you will, putting forward the premise of Vision Zero and safety. And it's just, it's too hard to even pick apart, well, would this work or would this work? Because because of all the unintended consequences of making any one piece of the solution without the whole context.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Kurtz, comments, and then we'll go to you.
Right, thank you. Appreciate all the community engagement and feedback, but like our other topics that we had tonight, I'm really glad we have the experts at the table. And I think it's really important. And I want to make sure that this item is really just focused on, let's bring the experts back to the table so we can continue looking at what the options are and what's the most viable, and what fits within the role that we have, which is around setting the policy, which is around our Vision Zero. And I'm so happy we have the BPAC, we have the other avenues for the community to be able to engage with, so everyone has an opportunity for these conversations. I am not an expert in this area, so I can't say one way is better than another way. So I am looking forward to the engagement of the professionals and the engineers, and then thank you for the opportunity for reaching back out to us to be able to walk us through all the complexities and the details as they come forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Urans-Galati.
Yes, I completely agree. I have been participating in a few of the BPAC meetings, and there were so many comments and so many iterations. So I completely agree. It's very complex, and I agree to bring the experts to and continue listening to the community so we can come up with something that is maybe not it's never going to be perfect, but closer to the goals that we're trying to achieve. So thank you.
Thank you, and I'll just close that. Thank you to April and to Joanne for coming this evening. As I said, this is traditionally an item that would be on the consent agenda because it's an amendment to a contract. But because of the community's interest and concern and wanting to learn more, and I really appreciate how the city has built out the website. You can receive updates. There's a FAQ section so people can understand. I live near here, and I've been going through this intersection for 29 years. I know it intimately. I've been on my bike, I've been in my car, and as Councilmember Kurtz has said, our policy as a council has continued to be, how do we have the bicycle plan, bicycle ped master plan done with community support? How do we have those ideals manifested in our community? So that is a nexus. Local road safety plan. I have been outspoken about the determination that we reduce our KSI, our negative bike ped car interactions in the city of San Rafael. We have the highest number in Marin County, and that is simply not acceptable. And so having, even though it's not a Vision Zero plan per se, I know that staff has heard us say that loud and clear. And I was reflecting as I received emails and I heard advocacy from the community over the last couple of weeks. The difficulty when you are trying to change systems, and in this case, a mobility system, in order to have it be safer, is that it's one thing to talk about it in theory, but this is literally where the rubber meets the road. And what it means is that you have to make the hard trade-offs if you are committed to reducing pedestrian and bike car interactions. If you're interested in having mobility around San Rafael be enhanced, if we're serious about that, that means having trade-offs where there are going to be projects that are going to have impacts to parts of the community. That's just part of it. I don't think we've ever made a decision ever on the council that there weren't trade-offs. There's pluses and minuses. And for me, the priority is always going to be through that safety. We are committed to having that Vision Zero be front and center. And I want the neighbors to know, I hear well and clear. I know what it's like when you are conditioned and appreciate the convenience and the accessibility and what you've been driving for the last 100 years, really. That's when these roads were constructed, or probably 75 years. So I don't underestimate that is truly antagonizing and frustrating to all of you. And I would have you counter or consider, as you're in those moments when you're frustrated, as this project seems to be moving forward and the design goes forward, that there's also a bigger vision literally here in our community, and what type of community do we want to be. And so the current council has continuously and repeatedly made decisions that uphold having mobility around our community, not just for cars, but to have other users of our roads. And until that changes, I think they're going to be continuing to have these conversations around trade-offs. So thank you for letting us go on a contract, but I think it was important to have this conversation for this project. I would request a motion on this item. Thank you.
I'll make a motion, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the second amendment to the professional services agreement with CSW Stuber Stroh Engineering Group, Inc. for additional engineering, design, and construction support services associated with a 2nd and 4th Street intersection improvements project in the amount not to exceed $66,000, increasing the total not to exceed amount under the agreement of $2,094,482.
And I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hill is absent. Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Yadenskalani.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 3-0. Thank you all. Can someone text Councilmember Hill? We just have one item left on our agenda, but we will wait until Councilmember Hill can at least hear. Okay, he's in the chambers. We can go proceed. So this is open time for public expression. This is any item that was a topic that was not on tonight's agenda. If you have anything to say, now is your moment.
I know we all want to go home, so I'll try and be brief here. So the tree ordinance, I mean, that got brought up here. Me personally, I just don't understand. I don't understand what's changed, right? I mean, are the trees different? No, I don't see any real changes with the trees. So just from my perspective, what has changed, all these decades and centuries or whatever we've been a city is the people, right? And we talked earlier tonight about neighbor conflict and people need to get along kind of thing. So I just wonder if this tree ordinance is really just people barking at each other, right? And basically you all need to do something to respond to that. So I just encourage you to, kind of similar to what we talked about with that intersection, is just to approach this differently, right? I mean, if neighbors don't get along, I mean, this tree ordinance is nothing. I mean, 1,000 things can come up, and if you keep giving it to them, they're just going to keep on barking, right? They're going to keep on complaining, chirping, commenting, or however you want to put that. So I just encourage you to build community, right? I mean, you all have mentioned that we could have block parties. Me personally, I should be more proactive in looking into this and applying for it. I would just get neighbors, like this group here, they talked about that left turn on Marquardt, and, I think that's important, but you see how unified they are and how powerful they are, right? Versus someone just like me who's just, I'm on my own here kind of thing, and just, So I just hope we could do anything else but have a tree ordinance where basically what are they going to do? They're just going to cut it down, right? You got to cut a little bit, just cut the whole thing down, right? In my community, I live in an HOA community. We have trees. We have some trees left, but we basically just cut them down, right? Because they're costly to maintain and all these kinds of things. So thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Any other comments? Not seen any. This meeting is adjourned. Good night.